This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so we switched gears, so we're going to talk about unemployment now, which is a part of our daily lives. Sometimes you might become unemployed for no fault of your own, or maybe it is a fault of your own, or there might be a drastic downturn in the economy and you get laid off. Um, or you might know somebody who is, or something like that, or maybe somebody was working in the tech sector and they slashed a bunch of jobs for whatever reason, right? We call it unemployed. And so when you're unemployed, you got to figure out, how you're going to make money. So before you understand unemployment, you have to understand employment. People who are employed, they're working. Obviously, they're being paid to work. And sometimes these people might own their own businesses, or they might even be unpaid workers in a family member's business. But you're still employed, you're working. And work includes either full time, part time, or temporary. Um, and sometimes people might be unemployed, but they might go on vacation, they might get sick, there might be bad weather, so they'll miss work for those reasons. But they're still employed. They have an employer, they're still getting paid. Unemployed people are who are not working. They're available and open to work, and they're looking for work, actively looking for work. Trying to find employment, can't find it, but they're still trying. They're unemployed. Unemployed also could be somebody who's been laid off from their employer and are waiting to be recalled to their job. Then there's a third category. So you have employed people and unemployed people. The third category is not included in the labor force. These are people that are not employed or unemployed. This could be full-time students, people working within the home, and retirees. They're not participating in the workforce. They're not in the labor force. That's the third type of people. This statistic here is from January 2019, so obviously very old, about 5 years old. But this is where we were 5 years ago. The labor force includes those who are both employed and unemployed peoples. They are actively working or actively seeking to work. We call those people the labor force. Then we also have the not in labor force. These are the people not working because they are either retired, a homemaker, or just simply not in that area. So full-time students, right? This is based off of, obviously, these population numbers have changed dramatically over the past 5 years. And also, the employment number has increased substantially. The labor force number is about the same as it was back then, and maybe a little bigger. So again, the labor force equals both employed and unemployed individuals. The unemployment rate is calculated by taking the percentage of the labor force that is unemployed. To find the unemployment rate, we take the number of unemployed peoples divided by the total labor force, which is employed plus unemployed, times 100. And that gives us the unemployment rate. That rate's very important because it tells us the health of the economy overall. This other rate's also very important. It's called the labor force participation rate. It tells us about the people actively working in the labor force. We take the labor force population divided by the adult population in the country times 100, and that gives us a labor force participation rate. These are people open and available to work. just some quick statistical data of the breakdown on the unemployment rates and labor force participation rates. These have changed slightly since 2018. Unemployment rates are a lot lower for everyone across the board, including teenagers. So the unemployment market experiences women of prime working age lower rates of labor force participation than men. Why? Because women during these ages might temporarily leave the workforce to take care of the household, raising families, etc. Other than that, both men and women experience the same rates of unemployment equally. I'm not saying they're treated the same way, because that's obviously not true. And they're also not paid the same. That's a story for another day. Black prime working age, similar to that of whites, but however, and this is still true, unfortunately, it's still true, there's much higher rates of unemployment for Black prime working age in comparison to whites. Why is this the case? There's a lot of disparity in the country, especially in different areas, right? You have rural areas, you have urban areas, and you have other areas. And oftentimes there's deserts, right? We call them, we call them deserts. It's kind of like a food desert, right? It's like, oh, there's no grocery store within 10 miles. That's a food desert. Employment deserts work the same way. There's no employers in certain areas, right? So there's a lot of reasons for these disparities. And then teenagers. This was true probably back in 2018 when this data was collected, but teenagers are actually working at a higher participation rate than they were in the past, but they still don't work at the same rates as older working adults do. We can see this is a really interesting trend. The current unemployment rate in the United States as of not that long ago, I think it's 4.2% here in the United States. Still one of the lowest it's ever been in history, and at least in recorded history. And it's probably really lower than that. And I think it'll continue to be around that percentage. Why? Because a lot of the baby boomer generation has retired or is in the process of retiring, and there's no one behind them to fill those jobs. And so we have higher job vacancy rates today than we have in the past, and just not enough people to fill those spots. So the natural rate of unemployment back in 2018 was 4.6%. Unemployment rate was close to 3.9. Today, that natural rate is 4.2%, and I believe the actual unemployment rate is significantly lower. It's I think it's like 3.5. Some levels of unemployment are cyclical in nature. It's kind of like having those summer jobs, right? The job rates increase during the summertime and are lower during the rest of the year. Cyclical jobs from the natural unemployment rate. This graph is a lot closer today than it was in prior years. In fact, there are projections that women will surpass men in the labor force in the future years. And I believe that to be true. Official unemployment rates are very useful when it comes to understanding the overall health of the economy. It's also a good measure of joblessness, but it's not perfect, right? We can see that there's a lot more commonalities now than there were in the past among different races, among the different genders, and we can see that there's a lot more commonality now. Unemployment is uh, doesn't mean the end of job, right? It means that someone's not employed, but they're spending a good amount of the time looking for work, right? They're unemployed. Some individuals report being unemployed, but they might not be looking for work as hard as others. Some people who are not currently counted within the labor force, they might want to work, but they're discouraged from finding work. These are individuals who want to work but have given up looking for a job. They're out there. There's a few. Yeah, they're out there. Just some more data. We're not going to worry too much about that. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, they have a lot of really interesting data on employment and unemployment. I encourage you to visit their website. It's bls.gov. And they have a lot of really interesting information on marginal workers, discouraged workers, and persons that are unemployed part-time. It's interesting to see the movement of people throughout the different sectors. Like for example, today in 2024, we see a large movement of individuals who have been working in the technology sector, and they're moving into other fields. Why is that? There's some displacement happening, and some of them are becoming marginalized and discouraged because of the direction of the industry. So, how long are the unemployed without work? Great question. On average, it's usually short term. It's usually very short term. It could be a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months, but usually people are employed within a half year or less, typically. If it goes beyond the 6 months, that could be a real big issue. And the reason for that is because the unemployment insurance will run out, and you know you won't have any income. So that's obviously a concern. So it's employment that if you're ever unemployed, to begin looking for work immediately. You don't want to be unemployed for too long. So yeah, I mean that's the typical trend. Unemployment rate will never fall to zero. It's impossible to fall to zero. There's always going to be some level of unemployment. It's usually around the natural rate of unemployment, which today, 2024, I believe is around 4.2% is current unemployment rate. That's the natural rate. Of course, there's fictional unemployment, which is where people are looking for it, but not really looking for work. It's kind of weird. And there's structural unemployment. This happens a lot when there's shifts in the workplace. It results when wages are set above the point of equilibrium. It actually creates more joblessness. And the reason for that is because with higher pay rates, there's going to be less job opportunity. Why? Because the employers cannot afford to pay a lot of people higher rates. That's why we have minimum wage laws, unions, and efficiency wages. So when you're looking for work, or when individuals are looking for work, of course, it's very important that you know what your skills are and you match those skills with available jobs. Think about what you're good at, what you like to do, and what you want to do. And have fun with it. Have fun with the job search. You want to, if you can demonstrate the passion about your skills and what you're good at, it'll be a lot easier for you to get work at doing that. Yeah. So that's what I always tell everyone. And also, If you want me to take a look at your resume ever, feel free to email it to me. Be happy to look at it and give you some pointers. And also, especially now, upload your resume to ChatGPT or one of the other AIs and let it create a new one for you. Because I'm telling you, it's scary good. Right? Yeah, just tell it your skills and all that and what you're looking for. It'll help you. There's always going to be some kind of friction. People change jobs, they change industries, they move around. And so, of course, that's ultimately going to cause some changes in levels of unemployment and changes in the local economies when it comes to employment. So, just things to be aware of. But these are always going to happen. Economy is always changing, right? That's certainly true. Construction rates the amount of construction might go down, might go up. Things like mining, computer data mining, food service, healthcare, all of these industries, they fluctuate a lot over time. And so I would expect there to be changes in the employment rates of those sectors based off of changes, right? It's kind of like you shut down the coal mining plant. Okay, so that's going to put coal mining out of work. So we're displacing those workers. They become unemployed, and then they need to find other work, right? As an example. Public policy drives those types of changes oftentimes. So there's government programs out there to help assisting in things like job training, job placement, etc. If you become unemployed, you might receive unemployment insurance benefits. It's like what, $400 a week or something like that. If you become unemployed for whatever reason. Where does that money come from? You might be asking. Your employer has been paying into that unemployment insurance program on your behalf while you're employed there. So that's where that money comes from. It doesn't come from the government. It comes from your employer. Right? So that's why, you have to work somewhere for a certain length of time before you're even eligible for that. So yeah, the limits of unemployment insurance, 50% of former wages for 26 weeks is I believe the maximum allowable by law, which is like $400. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty simple. The reason why minimum wage laws were established was, of course, to ensure fairness across the board, but it was also a way for individuals to be paid a living wage. Now, as you know, the federal minimum wage laws are kind of ridiculous at its current level. I think it's like something silly, like $7 an hour, which I don't even know how anyone could survive on that. I mean, I guess like if you're in the food service industry, you might receive tips as well. But if you average it out, it should be way more than that, right? So, but it's just, I don't know. I've always found it interesting. The majority of employers pay well above minimum wage. Not all of them, but most of them do. So here we see the effective minimum wage. So what does minimum wage do? It sets the minimum that the employer needs to pay you by law. But it also has a negative effect on demand. The demand for that employment actually goes down. Why? Because, or the supply does. Why? because employers can't necessarily afford to pay certain amounts, right? That's why there's less opportunity available at those rates. Wages are typically always kept above the minimum wage levels. And part of that reason is because of unionization of employment and efficiency wages. The reality is, the more skilled you are, the more you'll probably make. Your skills usually determine your ability to be paid certain wages. The better you are at certain things, the more you're going to make. Unions, in today, it's less than 11%. There's not a lot of unionization here in the United States. People think that there are. The media will have you believe that there are these huge unions, and there are. There's some big ones. The auto union, teachers union, food service workers union, hotel workers union. There's a bunch of them. All those unions together equal less than, currently I think it's about 9% of all workers in the United States. Yeah, that's not very many. They have some power, yes, absolutely they do. But they make up a very small amount of the population. Yeah. So when you hear about like especially around election time, they're always talk about the unions. I always find it kind of funny because the population of the union workers is not very big. Some of the benefits, though, is collective bargaining. So if you belong into a union and you want your wages to go up, you talk to people within the union and they negotiate with management to try to get higher wages. Yeah, that's one of the benefits called collective bargaining. They also do the same thing for benefits, etc. And that's how strikes often happen, is because the union gets upset with the employer for whatever reason. They disagree on something, the contract or whatever, and then they go on strike. We saw that recently with the Longshoremen's Union here on the East Coast. We saw some issues with that, with this, but that only lasted for about a day. So, but for some reason, everyone still went out and bought all the toilet paper. But for those of you who don't know, it's made here in the U.S., so there's no reason to go doing that. And then, yeah, so the unionization of workers, it's like 9%. Oftentimes, they do get paid pretty well, and they got great benefits, but it's not so great for the people outside the unions. And it's not so great for the employer because the employer has to pay a lot more. So there's good things and bad things about unions. Higher wages, better benefits, etc. But there's cost associated with that, right? The higher wages and higher benefits equal higher costs for the employer, which often means less of everything else for everyone else. Right? So are they good or bad for the economy? It depends who you talk to, right? The allocation of the labor, it's not necessarily equitable. It's not the same for everyone even in that union, right? So, you just have to be mindful before you make a decision to join a union. Again, they're higher pay, better benefits. Yeah, those are definitely true. But it also depends in the negotiations for contracts, etc. So it's really a big trade-off. And it's important to understand that as wages move forward, that you want them to be stable. You want your wages to be stable. You don't want them to go down sharply or up sharply. You want them to be consistent. Consistent wages equal better worker health, better worker turnover, quality and effort, all those things. the healthier you are, the better off you are. So be healthy, be happy, you'll make more money. And you'll probably stay at your job longer if they're treating you well and you're making decent money, right? So it's all connected. The more skills you have, the more employable you are, and the higher your quality is. The more effort you put in usually results in better pay, right? So when you go to work, show effort, show your quality, show your skills, go to work on time, and your employers will treat you well. Yep. You treat them well, they'll treat you well. Pretty simple. Think about it. Okay. We made it to the end of our discussion on unemployment. We talked earlier about finance. Just as a reminder, what you have to do by Sunday night, we have the unemployment hypothesis video, just as we've had before. Remember that if you want to try to pass this course, what you need to do is to do all the work. That includes discussion boards, hypothesis, your quizzes. Don't skip things. If you don't do, you decide you don't like the discussion boards, you don't like the hypothesis, if you don't do them, there's a great chance you will not pass. You need to do all the work to make an effort to pass the course. It's that simple when you boils down, okay? So, do all the work, you might pass. You got to do the work though. Okay, don't skip these discussion boards, don't skip these hypotheses. They're graded. And if you don't do them, you probably won't pass. So it's really that simple, right? So for this Sunday, you got the hypothesis on unemployment and you have the chapter 14-15 quiz. Those are your two action items for this Sunday night. Are there any comments, questions, concerns about anything at all? You all tired? Monday night, yeah? I get it. Not the most exciting topics. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for your time today. I sincerely appreciate you all being here. And again, if you ever need any help, you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can email me, call me, set up office hours. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. Thank you all so much. Appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Catch you later.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you,
rest of your
Professor.
night.
Thank you too. Thank you so much.
Have a good
Have a
night.
good day.
You too. Thank you. Catch you later. Take care.